This video is going to be me talking about basically how I got my confidence, tips for gaining confidence, and basically getting over the whole fat shaming, body shaming thing that our society likes to do. This is just one of the questions I've been asked most frequently on my blog and other places, if I've always been as confident in myself as I am, or basically just tips on liking yourself more, being more comfortable with yourself. To answer the first part of this, no, I was not always confident. For the better half of my life, I was very insecure, very self-conscious. I thought I hated the way I looked. I thought that no one would ever really like me or love me. I thought that it was going to hold me back from basically everything that I ever wanted, and I thought it was just this huge burden that I needed to get rid of. And yeah, it wasn't until I was like 16 or 17 that I started to realize that that was all just a bunch of bullshit that basically I had been led to believe, and that I didn't dislike myself nearly as much as I thought I did. But up until that point, I was really incredibly insecure. I looked for love in all the wrong places. I basically tried a slew of diets and different methods of trying to get rid of my body, and none of it worked. And at some point I was just like, you know, this is the only body that I have. Am I going to just continue resenting it and disliking it for the rest of my life, or am I going to look into this a bit more and try to find out why I feel these things? When I did first get into starting to like myself, one of the things that kind of started that for me was the fact that I found out that there are guys who like fat women, which I don't necessarily think is the best way to find self-love, because there is way too much of an emphasis on our worth being tied in with how many people find us attractive, specifically for, I guess, women who are attracted to men or straight women, if men find us attractive or not, and basing that on how much we like ourselves. And that's a really problematic thing, because we should never base our self-worth or self-love on whether or not other people think we're attractive. Because the thing is, and one of the things that really helps me basically both be more okay with myself and realize that basing our worth on whether or not someone finds us attractive is ridiculous, is that no matter who you are, there are always going to be people who are going to be attracted to you physically. There's this idea that there is a very set standard for what people are attracted to, and if you fall out of those categories, that you are just completely undesirable, unlovable, you're never gonna get what you want, and that is just complete bullshit. There are people with all different kinds of preferences. If you think about how many different people there are in the world, it's kind of amazing that so many people think that they're all going to be into the same thing. Even though when you think about it, people have different hobbies, they have different interests, there's a huge spectrum of different things that we like, and somehow when it comes to people and what we're attracted to in other people, a lot of us think that there is only certain things that everyone is attracted to, and that's not true. So for me, when I first got into finding confidence, I found that there were men who were actually attracted to fat women, have preferences for them, and like, this is a whole different topic entirely, but it was just really helpful for me, because at the time I thought that nobody was ever going to really like me and my body. I thought that they would be dating me for my personality and my face and just kind of tolerate my body. It never occurred to me that someone could be physically attracted to me entirely, or just attracted to me as a whole. So in a sense, it was important for me to figure out that there was nothing inherently wrong with my body as a whole in terms of if someone else would like it or find it attractive or not. And like I said, this is a really kind of complex topic because I don't really think that that's how we should be basing our self-worth. But I think if you are looking for a relationship, as far as romantic or otherwise, that it is important to understand that if that is what you're looking for, there will be people who will love you and want you as a whole and not just in spite of certain things, you know, like I think it's really harmful to be with someone who isn't attracted to you physically but is being with you because they love you in other ways. Like in the long term it doesn't really work out that well. So that was an important part for me. Another thing was figuring out that no matter who you are, there are always going to be people who love you and people who basically don't like you. Like, it doesn't matter who you are. Even the most, I guess, the people that you look up to the most that you think are practically perfect, those people are still going to have people who hate them or dislike them for whatever reason. And some of these reasons are just ridiculous. Like, they don't like someone because of the way they look. And you just have to realize that you don't need everyone to be on your side. You don't need everyone to be attracted to you. You don't need everyone to like you. Because do you know how exhausting that would be anyway? Like, if you had everyone like fucking liking you and wanting your attention, that would just be, I don't think I could handle that. But so basically, no matter who you are going to have people who dislike you for whatever reason. And that kind of sucks because some people are assholes about it, but the good thing is that you will also have people who like you, and that means a lot more. Another thing for me was, I figured this out more recently. When I first got into finding confidence, it was a lot more about figuring out that I could be attractive and stuff like that. And I guess more recently, with my whole body acceptance as a whole, I figured out that there's literally a multi-billion-dollar industry telling us constantly that we're not good enough, that there are all these things that we need to change, and that just you need to spend money in order to be better. This industry ranges from dieting and weight loss programs. Like, just that alone is a multi-billion-dollar industry of people telling you that unless you basically try to change yourself and these things about you, that you're not going to be as good as you could be. And then there's also the beauty industry, which is I have like a mixed relationship with the beauty industry just because I obviously do like beauty products, but I feel like there's a difference between having fun with it and feeling like you need certain things or you're not good enough, kind of. But basically, back to my point, figuring out that there are companies that literally are profiting off of us hating ourselves. Like, if you just think about that, think about how many businesses would go out of business if we started liking ourselves. If we didn't hate ourselves, they would not be profiting nearly as much. So I think finding out that there's such a huge market around trying to make us feel bad about ourselves, or like we're not going to be the best version that we can be unless we buy their products, really put into perspective a lot of why so many people are self-conscious and why we have this idea that we have to be a certain way in order to be loved or wanted or just successful. So finding that out and thinking about how ridiculous that is really helps me in terms of kind of taking a step back. And when I'm like, well, I don't like this part of myself. Like, why don't I like this part of myself? Is it because I've been told my whole life by companies that are trying to profit off of me that it'll look better a certain way? And thinking about how subjective that is. So that's the thing that helped me. Another big thing that I think a lot of women in particular do is comparing ourselves to other people, other women, being envious of how other people look, thinking that, just wanting what they have and thinking that if we had those things or if we looked at like they did, that our lives would be so much better and more fulfilling. And I think, I'm not sure where I heard this, but one of the things I think about is the fact that when we are comparing ourselves to other people, typically we are comparing our worst, what we consider the worst parts of ourselves, to those people's best. And what I mean by this is typically if we're jealous of the way someone looks in particular, we're looking at an image of them that is very polished, very what we consider to be perfect. And a lot of the times when we're comparing ourselves in a negative light, we'll think about all the things we don't like about ourselves. So it's just setting ourselves up for failure because we're automatically putting ourselves in a position to where we're not good enough or we're not as good as this other person. And it's just, you can't do that. You can't. There are people who do the same thing with you. You might be thinking that you would be so much better off if you had this woman's whatever, but there are going to be people who look at you and that think the same thing. So it's just like a really vicious cycle, and it's always pitting women against each other, and it's just which isn't to say that we shouldn't appreciate other people's whatever we're appreciating about them, but it's better to do it in a way that isn't putting ourselves down in the process, you know, like, which is really hard to do, admittingly. Like, it's really hard to do that and to not actively compare ourselves to others, but I think that's a big part of the process of not disliking ourselves. So that is a tip, to basically just try to stop comparing ourselves to other people, and while we can appreciate other people for whatever it is that we like about them, we can also like ourselves and not think that we're lesser because we like something about somebody else. Another of my tips, or basically things that helps me, was realizing that there are, a lot of times when we look in the mirror, we pick out all of these different flaws or things that we perceive as flaws and focus on those, and basically it's a whole train wreck of thoughts that we start thinking about, and none of them are good, and it's basically just putting ourselves down the entire time. I know a lot of people do this. And I think one of the more beneficial things to do is when you start to do this, you really need to question why you're doing it. Like, if you look in the mirror and you hate your stomach because you think it's big or fat or whatever, think about why you dislike it so much. Why is it bad if it's fat? Why does that have anything to do with your worth or your beauty, or just why is it bad? Usually these feelings stem from a very deep-rooted, basically, idea that we've gotten from when we're younger. So we have to really try to dismantle those thoughts because they're so deep-rooted in. So a lot of people think that confidence is just this like light bulb that you switch on, and it's more like if you've thought the same way for years and years, like if you've hated yourself and you've despised certain things about yourself for years and years, it's not going to happen overnight, because you literally have to take those thoughts and the way that you usually react to those things, and actively try to change the way you think about them. So it's really a process. And so when you're thinking those negative thoughts about your body or your face or whatever you don't like about yourself, you have to think about why you think that way, and think, maybe this isn't true. Maybe my worth is not dependent on this thing. Maybe I'm beautiful despite that. And I think a big thing that helps when you start to do this is to focus on things that you actually do like about yourself. Like, if you're not comfortable with your stomach, focus on something about yourself that you do like, that you do find attractive, or just something about yourself that makes you feel good. And at first, for some people, that might not be very much, but if you focus on that and think of good things, then I think it's easier to start trying to put that energy into other parts of ourselves. For me, I used to absolutely hate my upper arms, like my fat, hanging upper arms. I used to hate them entirely. I went for probably like 6 years without wearing anything that was sleeveless. I constantly wore sweaters and cardigans and just things that covered up my arms, even in the summer when it was boiling hot. And I just thought that I would never be able to wear something that would show my arms, because I was afraid that everyone would hate me or stare at me, or just that I was disgusting because of them. And basically, for me, what I did was just went out. I found a shirt that I really liked that I knew wouldn't look nearly as good with something over on top of it. So I bought it, and one night I just put it on and was like, I need to do this. I need to wear this out. What is the worst that could happen? And I can't even really describe what that feeling was like when I did finally wear that outside and into public, because it was just the most freeing feeling. Like, I can still even remember that kind of feeling now, even though it was years ago, and it's just indescribable. It's amazing to realize that this thing that you had built so much up in your head, you had control over, and that it wasn't going to ruin you, or people weren't going to mock you and humiliate you because of it. Like, I've never once had anyone say anything to me about my arms. And I know in that regards I might be lucky, but I think we often build up this stuff a lot bigger in our heads than what it actually is. And now my upper arms are one of my favorite parts of my body. I love how squishy they are. I love that they're big. I love them, and I don't really even know if I have a reason for that, other than I don't have any reason to dislike them. Like, yeah, they're hingy, yeah, they're really fat, but so what? Who's to say what an arm should look like? They're my arms. I have the right to love them, and I'm going to love them because they deserve to be loved. So, hopefully the point of that one kind of got put across. But basically, I don't even know where to go from here, but confidence for me was really about the process of finding out why I thought the way I did, finding out that my worth is not dependent on how other people look at me or if they find me attractive, but if I am looking for a romantic relationship, that I can find someone who is attracted to me as a whole, and I did. So there's that, to all the people who think that you can't find love if you're any certain kind of thing physically. Kind of just, yeah, that's not true at all. And I just figured out that I could have all of the things that I wanted as I was. Like, being thin wouldn't automatically make me happy. It wouldn't automatically make me successful as how I define success for myself. It wouldn't fulfill me in all the ways that I had thought it would when I was younger. How I thought for most of my life that I was just worthless as I was. And I realized that I'm worth just as much as the weight I am now as if I was a size 6. Like, being a size 6 would not make me a better person. So, really, for me, that's what it's all about, realizing that worth and success and fulfillment and happiness and all of the other things that make life pleasurable and the things that we enjoy aren't dependent on how much we weigh or what we look like. Like, that really has nothing to do with it. So, my advice to you is to not compare yourself to others, to realize that your worth is not dependent on whether or not other people find you attractive, because it is not your job to be attractive to everyone. It is not your duty to be other people's preferences, but you will be someone's preference if that is what you want. If you want to be with someone romantically and that's what you desire, there will be someone or someone's out there who will want you entirely. And just find things about yourself that you do like and try not to focus so much on the things that you dislike. And once you start realizing what you do like about yourself, try to apply that to the things that you don't like. Like, if you think that your stomach is too fat, think about the fact that it's soft and it's fun to touch and it's cute. And there are just things about ourselves that we're way too critical of, and we just never think about the positives because we're so worried about what other people think. And if other people aren't attracted to you, that's okay. That's natural. You're not attracted to certain people either. But if someone tries to make you feel bad because they aren't attracted to you, then that's where they've gone wrong, because nobody owes it to anyone to be attractive to that person. Like, that's just so important to remember, that beauty is not a measurement of worth, and that is not what we are put here to do, is to just be eye candy for everyone. And if we're not, that we're not as valuable. It's not true. And I think it's really important to remember that. So, I don't know, hopefully somewhere in here there is something useful. If not, I'm sorry for wasting your time, but that's basically just the main points of how I found love in myself and how I decided that, you know, I'm not worth this, I'm not ugly, I'm not anything negative that I thought I was before based on how I looked. I can be anything I want to be as I am. So that's what I give you to hopefully try to find in yourself. Try to realize that this is your body, you only have it for one lifetime, and take care of it on your own terms. Treat it how you think it should be treated on your own terms. And another big thing to remember is, if you wouldn't say the things that you say to yourself to someone that you love, your family, your friends, your significant other, if they would hurt those people and you wouldn't say them to them, you probably shouldn't be saying them to yourself either. But anyway, I'm not ever gonna end this, so I'm just gonna end this now. Anyway, if you have any more questions or anything you want me to talk about or try to discuss, then go ahead and leave a comment or message me on Tumblr or what have you. But anyway,